immense pleasure to introduce our two next speakers, Julia Peyton-Jones and Sou Fujimoto. There are so many dimensions to Julia's work. It's almost like in superstring theory. We could talk about her early performance art. We could talk about her work at the Haver Gallery at the beginning. We could talk about her, ever since 1991, putting the Serpentine on the international map and producing so many miracles. But today, I want to talk about Julia's invention of the pavilions. We discussed a lot in the last couple of days the difficulty of exhibiting architecture, the difficulty of having, panels or drawings just on the wall, and how can one make actually an archive active. Obviously, the solution to it Julia found is incredible. It's just to build architecture every year. When she invented in 2000 with Zaha Hadid the Serpentine Gallery Pavilion, this magical thing that all of a sudden, every summer on that little piece of land in front of the Serpentine, a new pavilion pops up and transforms the situation completely. In October it's gone, and the next year it starts all over again. The incredible thing also about this is that it's every year a completely different experience, and that leads us to Sou Fujimoto. And for me, it's one of the great experiences of working at the Serpentine, really, because it's such a different experience all of a sudden with an architect to produce reality. When Julia and I invited Sou Fujimoto last year, we had no idea what he will do, and he will tell us more about it today. His incredible pavilion. Sou is a Japanese architect who founded his architectural practice in 2000 and has realized many projects: the final wooden house, the N house, the House K, the primitive future house. But the Serpentine Pavilion was his first building in the UK, and that's the important rule Julia defined at the beginning, the rule of the game for the pavilion. The artist has never built before in the UK, and such an important aspect to actually make the architecture discussion in England more international. Please give a very, very warm welcome to Julia Peyton-Jones and Sou Fujimoto.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, fellow travelers, you have no idea how often I've heard Hans-Ulrich do these kind of introductions since he became co-director of exhibitions and programs and director of international projects at the Serpentine. And I can honestly say it's always a pleasure. It is also an enormous pleasure to be sitting on this platform with Sou, because Hans-Ulrich briefly outlined the kind of template of the Serpentine Pavilion, which is very simple and modest. However, the relationship that we have with architects as a result of this great endeavor remains something which is to be treasured forever. We are kind of like a little army going into war to achieve what seems at the outset to be the impossible. And we put the architects under considerable pressure from day one. And in Sou's case, even greater pressure, because when we invited him to the Serpentine to look around the site and to begin our discussions, we sent him a letter in advance, but omitted to say that we were inviting him to design the pavilion. I was late for the meeting and came running in, and proceeded thinking that the discussion about him designing the pavilion had already been made, when in fact not a word had been said. So Sou sat there for at least an hour and a quarter thinking, what is all this about? However, these anecdotes are part of the wonderful experience. And left to our own devices, Sou and I would probably relive every single one of them. But ladies and gentlemen, you are going to be protected from that. What I need to say is that the pavilion is an ongoing project, and the next pavilion will open on the 24th of June. It's by Smiljan Radic. And I'd say it at the beginning so that there is no chance that I would forget to do so at the end. Sou.
Hi.
Hi. This is really about you. Mm-hmm. But if I may, I just want to say one thing about arriving here yesterday. Yeah. It was at a time when it wasn't quite so busy as it is today. And Cedric Price was part of my childhood. And he was part of my childhood because I would be taken as a very special treat to go and see the London Zoo, where, of course, he designed the aviary. Yeah. And my family has a fascination with birds, and so the combination of the two has really been very personal. It therefore became a kind of favorite place for me to visit. What I did not know at the time, of course, was the aviary was designed by a great architect. When I arrived yesterday, I heard the incredible sound of birds, and I said to Hans-Ulrich, what was it? And he pointed to the roof there and said that the birds came from the roof. And I assumed in my fantasy that somehow there was an aviary on the roof, an homage to Cedric, which of course was completely untrue. So as part of this discussion, what I want to do is explore the connections between you and Cedric Price, as well as the relationship to your work and his, excuse me, and whether you think his kind of definition of different models of living and the work that you've done in this terrain, the architecture that you've done, there is any kind of connection, or whether you're on two different parallels.
Oh yeah, hello everybody. Yes, of course, in the process last year to design a pavilion, I didn't too much think about such a relationship because the pressure from Julia was so big, so I have to concentrate on the design. But now, after 1 year, and in this occasion, I was thinking about the really interesting connections from Cedric Price through Japanese architecture to our generations. So today I brought some of the images. So could you? Yeah, this is a Serpentine Pavilion, and I brought three viewpoints, three keywords. So the first one is next, please. Of course, interaction. Interaction is, I think, one of the very important keywords for the Cedric Price, especially for the Fan Palace project. It's like an interaction between the people's behaviors and the whole systems. And in here, in Serpentine Pavilion, I try to create different kinds but the similar interaction between the people's behaviors and the space. Because this is the cafe space, but more like a multi-purpose space. So not only one programs, one functions, but more like an open field. People can choose or feel several different functions in it. So that was one of the, how to say, similarities, simple similarities. Could you show the next one? So this is one of the drawings of the Fan Palace. And then next, please. Yeah, this is a serpentine. So you will see, in a sense, it's very similar. It's made by frames. And the serpentine pavilions are made by the 40 centimeter modules and sometimes 80 centimeters. So you can use as the whole pavilion as a furnitures-like things, the climbing up or relaxing, something. Next, please. Yeah, something like such kind of a different behaviors are coming together. And the very big different point from the Fan Palace to this pavilion is this is not moving. Everything is fixed. Then, of course, the Fan Palace is more dynamic, moving around. I chose, of course, it depends on the coast or something, but the more important things is the fixed structures create the inspirations for people to choose or to imagine several different functions or several different ways to use it. So that was the intention of the pavilions. Could you show another one? So children's or the dogs or elderly people and young people, everybody are very free to behave as they like. The next one, please. Yeah, and from not only from inside but from outside, they can interact with the space. So that was the main concept of my Serpentine Pavilion last year.
Cedric Price spoke about the short life of buildings, no more than 3 stories high, and also they should be temporary. Now, of course, the pavilion is only on the lawn for 4 months. It's a very, very temporary structure.
Yeah.
It has no loos, you don't have to worry about kitchens, no bathrooms,
Yeah.
and that, of course, is a great advantage. What, in effect, was the advantage for you of designing the pavilion? What kind of freedoms, or indeed not, did it give you?
Temporary, you mean temporary pavilion?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, it was very tough project for me because if you think about the temporary things, it's, how to say, I was so used to design architecture and based on relating to the surroundings and based on such a permanent relationship with the people. But temporary one sounds, at the beginning, sounds a bit different from that. But then, I was lucky because in the case of the Serpentine Pavilion, we have a beautiful context, surroundings, and even though it is temporary, but for me, it's really like a real architecture. So I was more focusing on such an architecture aspects and not too much think about, how to say, the temporary things from the beginning. But this lightness and maybe the interactions, more free interactions made by this lightness are only realized in the temporary pavilion things. So in that case, in that sense, finally I can combine the good point of the pavilion and the good point of the permanent architecture together.
And the whole structure of the grid, which is omnipresent in your work in one form or another, of course, was played out to an extreme extent, one might say, in your design for the Pavilion. How did that start? What was your starting point? Because there was the labyrinth and the grid, which were kind of running in tandem.
Yeah.
So perhaps you could talk a little bit about your beginnings.
Yes, the beginning was more chaotic, but the two starting points inspire me. One is the beautiful surroundings, green surroundings. So I try to create nice communications, nice conversation with the surroundings, so people could feel such a beautiful surroundings, even from inside. That was one starting point. Another one is like it is a cafe basically, and then sometimes different use. So I try to provide the field where people can use in a different way, depending on their situation, depending on their feelings. So at the very beginning, I tried to make kind of a landscaping things, maybe made by concrete or like a hilly things. It will provide the field for people to behave as they like. And then I saw the model, and I understand it's too heavy, too blocking the surroundings. So solid landscape is, in a sense, too heavy. So I try how we can make such a landscape intransparent. Then the ideas of the grid came out. The grid is really thin, so you will see through the landscape. But if you are closer, then you can step on or you can sit on. So combination of the transparency or the communication with the surroundings and the interaction with the human body was together. So that was the starting point of the grids.
But the grid existed in your work well before the Serpentine Pavilion. So I'm thinking about how you devise the grid as a kind of structural form that you found so compelling that you have really explored it throughout all your architectural life.
Yeah, before Serpentine, of course I was using the grid as a part of the project, but I was not so convinced. I was not so sure the grid is so powerful. And then during the process of the pavilion, of course at the beginning I thought grid is too straight, too ordinary in a sense, or too artificial. But then if you make it really thinner and so many grids, it's starting from really fundamental form of architecture, but then it is getting more like some different or vision for the future. I think it would change. So we could have nice duality of the really fundamental things and something new together. So that was the really amazing point I felt in the grids.
So if you talk about your Musashino Art University of 2010, or House NA, for example, and now the incredible project which I saw yesterday, the Montpellier Housing Tower, which is extraordinary. Do you have an image of that?
No, in this image, sorry.
Something that will be published later. Or indeed the bus stop that you're also currently working on. What is the kind of architectural language? What is your, what do you return to? What is your source?
Yeah. I think so. Could you show the next image? So maybe the key was technology and nature, or architecture and nature. Every time I am trying to combine or melt these kind of opposite things together. And so could you show next one? So yeah, this is again the Cedric Price. So it's like a technology, mechanical technology, but it interacts with the human behaviors. And next, please. And this is the Kurokawa's project by Metabolist. So then it is technology, but it's getting more and more organic. As the title Metabolist suggests, it's getting more organic. And then next, please. It's the final, last pavilion. So every time, for us, the Japanese people, the technology things is coming through the organic things or through the nature things and then into the architectural things. Because I have to say about the traditional Japanese gardens, it's a combination of the technology and the nature together. So for me, such kind of a, how to say, how we can understand the architecture things and the natural things together is quite important. And the nature things is relating to your body and your behaviors, and your body is part of the nature. So for example, Musashino Library, it's like a labyrinth. So it's made by the architecture, it's limited areas, but you will feel almost infinite. And to continue to walk around in the half architecture, half natural labyrinth. It's like a forest. So every time such a labyrinth, it's like an architectural words, but the forest is more nature. But in my mind, such a labyrinth, architecture things, and the forest-like things are together, and going back to see something between that.
Maybe this is a moment to bring in Lucius Burkhardt, who's been missing in my references, and of course is so much an essential part of this pavilion, as indeed obviously is Cedric Price. And I think of really the idea of the promenadology, which is if you work in a park as we do, the promenade is a very different kind of thing for taking a walk. However, we are talking in a way about the labyrinth, which is a kind of, it's a passeggiato of a certain kind. So he feels also very present in these discussions. Is there anything that you can say in terms of the homage that really is made to nature in Japan and these two great protagonists, Cedric Price and Lucius Burkhardt, that you can somehow bring it together?
Yeah, so maybe I will show the third, the relation between the space and the body, or interactions. And next one, please. Yeah, this is a really Japanese traditional house, but actually this is a Katsura Palace. So it's like a sliding doors within the frames. So the grid frames define the basic space, but then you will use such a movable thing. So it's almost like a fun palace, the interactive and too flexible, but relating more to your human body scales. And next, please. And this is our pavilions. We don't have any moving elements, but it's getting more and more closer to your body scales, body size. And next, please. And this is Tokyo, the street of the Tokyo. And as you can see, the street of Tokyo are made by such a small, tiny elements. So even it is a street, but it's made by our human scales. Everything's composed by such a human scales. Then, if you walk around in the Tokyo tiny street, or for me, the same as in the forest, you will feel such interactions, and you will feel organic orders in the relationship between such many, many elements. So that is the origin for me to think about architecture, and it's an homage from me to the Cedric Price. Yeah.
It's very, very beautiful. I'm looking at Hans-Ulrich. How's the time? Well, please make the correct signal when you need to. And so we look at the future. I'm thinking about the work that you're engaged with now. The bus stop, which is a very particular project, and it's an even more microscopic version of the Pavilion program, insofar as a bus stop is a bus stop and it's really tiny by nature. And you're working with 7 other international architects who have been given the same brief for a tiny village, town. Do you want to say a little more about it?
Okay, yeah. I'm sorry, I don't have images now, but the bus stop project in the small village in Austria named Krumbach, it's so beautiful project because 7 architects of my generations are invited to design each small bus stop. They have only 7 bus stops in the village, so all the bus stops will be designed by different architects. And the exciting point of the project is, one is a program, bus stop, in such a small village. Bus stop is, of course, part of the public transportation, so it's a big program. But the bus stop itself is quite small, really personal, and more, how to say, the intimate relation to your body. So from the really big transportation scales to the human body scales, you will feel such a diversities of architectures. And another exciting point is the architects who they chose. The list, they sent the list as an invitation of the project, and I saw it, and it includes many of my respecting architects, including Wan Shu and Smirhan Radic, and Anton Garcia and Abril from Madrid. So it was great, exciting project to be involved in that as an architect, and to think about such a, how to say, fundamental programs relating to your body and at the same time relating to huge scales urban transportations.
And then another project which I was very intrigued by is the Montpellier housing tower. Again, relating to the body, because firstly it's a tower, so it's about limited space, confined space, but it also brings nature as a very, very integral part of that project. Could you describe it for us?
Maybe could you, the last one is maybe the images, okay. So this is maybe describing my background or the concept in architecture. Every time thinking about nature and architecture things. And in case of the Montpellier, it's a 55-meter tower, so it's big. But I try to introduce the daily life of the Montpellier people. They have a Mediterranean beautiful climate, and they have a beautiful outdoor terrace to have more time than interior. And they have a cafe tables on the street. So how we try to create how we can introduce such a basic or traditional life and a fundamental life of that area into the contemporary high-rise architecture. And our strategy is very simple, just to make huge balconies sticking out from the apartment. So from outside, it's just balconies, flying balconies, the volume of the flying balconies. And you will see there are so many different lives of the peoples are sticking out from the balconies. So then simply try to combine nature and architecture together.
Now I want to try an experiment, and it could fail terribly, so please bear with me. What Sou's not said about the balconies is that if you see the profile of the tower, it kind of looks like a hedgehog shape, except it's more vertical. And the balconies kind of cascade. Do you think, it's actually, it's not correct, of course, but it gives you an idea of why the description that Sou's given is absolutely right, but it, for me, doesn't convey the one character that made me feel really amazed and with a huge desire to see it. So I think this is the optimum point to thank you very much indeed, Sou, for sharing your thoughts with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.